Right boys, it's time to go back in time, to an era of exploration and experimentation. A time where anyone with an idea could make a real-time strategy game, so long as they had a 24 strong game studio, some investor funding, and a publishing company on board to distribute it. While yes, the barrier to entry to make a game was much higher then than it is today, where we have literally single-person studios creating masterpieces in their bedroom, that didn't mean there wasn't a lack of game ideas that would make you tilt your head and go, huh? When you heard about them. Such is the case with PARAWORLD, a 3D action strategy game from 2006, the era of Age of Empires, Empire Earth, and Command & Conquer. Developed by German company Developed by German company SEK, PARAWORLD aimed to capitalize on the popularity of real-time strategy by merging everyone's two favorite things, Age of Empires and dinosaurs, into one convenient package. No longer were you required to simply play Age of Empires 2 on a laptop with Prehistoric Park playing in the background, listening to Nigel Marven's sweet, sultry voice as he exclaimed about his latest animal rescue while you imagined your battle elephants were dinosaurs with tribesmen on top. Now they actually are. The dream is real. And they sat alongside other units in your army like brachiocatapults, worker mammoths, and spear men. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. Let's go back in time to explore the beginnings of PARAWORLD. So, how did this happen? Why are there dinosaurs? Why are there stone-aged human tribespeople? Why is everyone fighting? And why is there so much booba? It all begins with our main three protagonists paying a visit to a rich, well-meaning, cigar-smoking man who is definitely not going to turn out to be the villain of this story. They've all found some sort of evidence about prehistoric creatures and the existence of a parallel world, and they're hoping the Society of Exact Alternative Science, or SEAS, has some answers. Which they do, just maybe not the ones they were expecting. Our characters are an eclectic mix and range from nerdy scientist guy to confident, well-endowed woman to overt sex pest man who A, I can't believe hasn't been put in prison, and B, might hold the award for the worst possible superhero name ever since The Wizard. Or Matter Eater Lad? What are these? They're not exactly the most likeable bunch, but wow, they really just did whatever in the 2000s, huh?
Welcome aboard, Mr. Cole.
Well, well, the pleasure's all mine, miss.
Oh, please, call me Ada.
Somehow, I still don't relish the idea of jumping out of the plane in that box.
Yo, baby, I'd be happy to hit that crate with you anytime.
Everybody hold on tight. We're ready to roll.
So yeah, they straight up just get tossed out of a plane in a wooden box with like a parachute. I guess this is just an average day of science in the 19th century. I wasn't there, so how would I know? Also, they have planes? What? I just thought about that. Anyway.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Viking Park.
Now that's making an entrance.
Wait, hold on. I thought you were scientists. Why do you have two swords? Where are you keeping those? And you have this huge bow and arrow? Why? You're a scientist. You might think that a group of nerds would find being dropped into a prehistoric era combat zone would be cause for alarm. But no, they're basically all cool with it. This sole fact takes any semblance of authenticity to the story and just chucks it out the window. The worst part is that it is trying to be serious, as far as I can tell anyway. It's at least not being a parody. Like, yeah, there are other RTSs with insane storylines that just sound like a joke on paper, such as Old War Correspondent discovers that hybrid animals exist thanks to the Tunguska event and needs to use them to fight across an island archipelago against mustache-twirling villains. It's ridiculous, but you can take it somewhat seriously because the characters make decisions that are rational and act in a way that you might if you were put in such a situation. In PARAWORLD, they do not act like people. They don't make decisions like people. All they do is bring the story down to a point where you can laugh at it. There's really no investment to be had here. across the parallel world there are a few tribes of humans who all have different relationships with one another and the ancient creatures that inhabit the world. Some are friendly to you, some are hostile, and one even creates and controls these huge giant robots and other steampunk-esque technology. As you can probably guess, these are the bad guys, and it's up to you and the three heroes to defeat them with help from some of the natives. You see, the SEAS wants to rule the world because there's no aging, and there's also some plot about a cataclysm and the planet moving out of orbit. What? Yeah, like I said, lore bomb. Anyway, that obviously needs to be stopped, but you also need to find your way home too. Though, once you do that, even that doesn't go smoothly. The devs clearly have liked The Lost World, as they set up a sequel that obviously never happened. Look, I gotta be honest, the more you think about the story in PARAWORLD, the less it makes sense. So trust me, just don't. It's probably been obvious from the get-go, but visually, PARAWORLD is, okay, honestly, it's hit and miss. Characters are pretty gnarly, and it probably wouldn't be so bad if in the campaign they weren't constantly getting into their faces and filling half the screen with them. But once the camera zooms out, it's not that bad. It's pretty good for 2006 standards, I reckon. It has that kinda cozy early 3D RTS vibe that I can't really nail down to one specific thing. It's how it all comes together that makes it, I don't know, cozy, like I said. Other games like Age of Mythology and Command & Conquer Generals have this kind of aspect too. If you know, you know. Lighting is pretty good, and it gives your town a nice sense of homeliness, especially with the day-night cycle that is sometimes pretty jarring because of how significant the look changes, but it does make the whole world seem a little more dynamic than your standard frozen in time style RTS map. The overall art style is pretty good, and honestly I can't really fault it as it is just a product of its time. Yeah, things are blocky, the effects are kinda cheap, but the world looks and feels like the setting the plot describes, and the faction designs are unique and thematically fitting for each of them. The Dust Riders have this tribal look going on with a heavy use of primordial creatures, and they stand out as what I think are the most interesting of the three available in the base game. Meanwhile, the SEAS are more militaristic, instead fielding those huge combat robots and other steampunk implements. These guys aren't actually playable without a mod, which we'll discuss later. Without it, they're relegated to the primary antagonists of the campaign story. Like I said with visual effects, they are just a mixed bag. Unfortunately, there's this overuse of bloom or a shine effect that it kinda makes your monitor look like it's received a coating of Vaseline. It's one thing I find with these early-ish 3D RTS games, they often lack the visual clarity of their 2D counterparts, and honestly I feel like that's a criticism that you could still level at a lot of these kinds of games today, in relation to how strategy used to be basically all 2D all the time. Though there are of course outliers, and for the most part 3D RTSs are pretty good nowadays. Though 2D ones or 2.5D ones can still hit pretty darn well, probably better to be honest. Regardless, as far as these kinds of games go, for the time, PARAWORLD is certainly not the worst thing I've ever seen in terms of visual quality, but it's nowhere near the best either, so we'll just leave it at that. In the video's title, I say that PARAWORLD is basically just Age of Empires with dinosaurs. An admittedly reductive statement, but not wholly inaccurate. Broad strokes could easily paint around 3/4 of the gameplay in both games. You've got villages to gather resources, a bunch of buildings that fill different roles, and an age progression system to guide you through the game as your options and abilities expand. The factions are similar but not exactly the same, reminding me of something like Nod and GDI from Command & Conquer. They follow the same pathways, but they excel at different things and have unique focuses and strengths. But like many RTSs of the time, gameplay basically boils down to building a town and choosing one of a few ways of destroying your enemy, whether it be in early rushes with cheap troops and animals, some of whom have the superhuman ability to shoot backwards, or with a late game stomp utilising the biggest and baldest? Okay, I think this is supposed to be baddest. Anyway, I'm keeping it in. The biggest and baldest units in the game. But that's really it, and to be honest I didn't find that PARAWORLD had any special sauce or X factor that makes it stand out from its contemporaries. Sure, it has some differences. For example, resource stockpiles are capped and they need to be expanded to progress through the epochs, which I kinda just found annoying, as it leaves your workers standing around a lot of the time just doing nothing. Another interesting thing is how units are upgraded and improved. Instead of having a passive leveling system or veterancy mechanic, units can be manually upgraded, through a bunch of tiers using skulls, a resource gathered from killing creeps and actual enemies. I like how it encourages you to get out there, fight and explore, just like how Warcraft 3 did with its hero leveling, but the system becomes a bit unmanageable once you get a decent sized force, and I find myself constantly forgetting to upgrade my troops. I wonder if this system would have worked better if it was reserved for just the game's heroes, and not on every single troop that you control. Oh yeah, so heroes, there's a bunch of them, some of whom you'll have played with in the campaign, and some you haven't. They're kind of powerful on their own, but they work best as a larger force. These guys aren't going to be flattening any armies on their own. To be honest, I found them pretty boring and not very interesting in their own right. They are better in the campaign since there's some kind of story surrounding them, making them feel somewhat alive, but in skirmish they're just kinda there. Sometimes I just forgot to build them and would just build an army and get the job done just fine. So, I mean, yeah, PARAWORLD's gameplay, the best way I can describe it is just meh. Like, it's fine. It's an Age of Empires 2-like, but like I said, there's no X factor, nothing that it really does that any other game of the time didn't already do. Like, if you want an RTS with heroes and some unit progression, and interesting factions, play Warcraft 3. If you want interesting armies, play Impossible Creatures. If you want super tight mechanics, play Age of Empires 2. If you want a good campaign story, play, I don't know, any of these. It might seem like I'm unnecessarily ripping into the game, but like I did say, it's fine, it's okay. You can play it and have fun. I just don't think it'll light any fires in your heart to rekindle your love for RTS or anything. Look, if it's your favourite game from your childhood, don't let me tell you it's not the greatest thing ever. In fact, why don't you tell me why you think it's the greatest thing ever in the comments? I would love to have my mind changed. Like a lot of strategy games throughout the years, PARAWORLD's modern day community has partly formed around a mod that's helped to keep its small but dedicated fanbase alive. Mirage is what it's called in this case, and essentially it's a huge patch that aims to create the perfect PARAWORLD experience, rather than recreate it or imagine it. Mirage brings a bunch of new maps, a brand new epoch, that's like adding in 5th age in Age of Empires, which makes for a total of 6 epochs now. There's new units, a new class of unit and flying blimps and such, some customizable mechanics and more. Plus it works in the campaign too, so it's not just for skirmish. Installation is fairly easy if you follow the instructions, and after a few minutes tinkering I was able to get it running on Windows 11 with no hassles. It runs in parallel to the base game too, so if you want to go back to the normal game, then you just run a different executable. Nice and easy. PARAWORLD didn't receive any expansions or extra content due to its poor commercial performance of the day, except for one. Unfortunately, the booster pack, containing maps, heroes, missions, and more, was released only in its native country of Germany, and only in German. This has been rectified though, with community members repackaging it as an unofficial download that, thankfully for me, you can now download today in English. If you'd like to take part in the PARAWORLD community, then there's both the classic forum and the hot and fresh Discord server, both of which include a bunch of helpful info and useful people. Other way around, I mean. So go check them out if you're looking to get into PARAWORLD today, or find some people to play with. I'm sure they would welcome you with open arms. Man, PARAWORLD, eh? What a strange game. Like, I see what the devs were going for here, but I just don't really think it hits the mark in basically any of the goals that I could imagine it would have. They clearly were aiming for a grand narrative with lots of characters and drama and twists, but I just found the story super boring, and the best thing I can say about the characters is that they made me laugh, but probably not in the way they were intended. Gameplay wise, even for the time it was released, PARAWORLD wasn't pushing any boundaries or moving the genre forward. It's a simple, safe strategy game with an admittedly unique setting, and the benefit of having people be able to go up to their mates and go, "Hey bro, you love Age of Empires, right? So how about Age of Empires with dinosaurs?" And hey, if this game gives you some big nostalgia, you played it as a kid and now you go back to it every now and then, don't let me stop you from doing that. I certainly have some games that I know aren't very good, that I do the same for. But if you've never played PARAWORLD before, and you're looking for some kind of different RTS, or something fresh from the time period that you never played, honestly I'd recommend looking past this one. Unless the setting really jumps out at you, or you're just interested to see what this bizarre 2006 experiment of an RTS has to offer. And hey, there's a community who are around to this day, there's active games happening, people are playing, so you might find some opinions there that are quite different to mine. we can all coexist, right? Thanks so much for watching. If you'd like to support me and what I do here, then consider becoming a patron or member here on YouTube. You'll join legends like Hero, Crizzy218, George, Jack, Nutty Jawa, Overlord Jeebus, T-Edits, Crispy Robo Chicken, XV204, Benjamin, David, Cynical Cheddar, Sebastian, Dakayo, David again, Nintendo, Bad Ghosts, Sean, Grey Spirit 4, Peter, and my paladins Johnny Woof, Strateger, and Eric. Thanks very much, guys. You know I appreciate it. And so, thank you again very much for watching, and I will see you all next time.